The notification popped up on my phone at 2:47 a.m. while I was reviewing patient charts in the hospital break room. Your girlfriend Jessica has uploaded a new video. Living with a terminal partner. The hardest part they don't tell you. I stared at the screen, confusion slowly giving way to cold realization. I wasn't terminal. My recent diagnosis of Crohn's disease was serious, but entirely manageable with proper treatment. Yet here was Jessica, apparently building her social media presence around a fabricated version of my medical situation. I clicked on the video with steady hands, my years of medical training keeping my emotional response in check while I processed what I was seeing. Jessica sat in our bedroom, tears streaming down her carefully made-up face, describing the devastating news of my prognosis to her 180,000 followers. She spoke about sleepless nights, about planning a future that might not exist, about the courage required to love someone who was slowly dying. Every word was delivered with practiced emotion, each pause perfectly timed for maximum impact. The video had been posted while I was working a 12-hour shift in the emergency room where I served as a resident physician. As I scrolled through the comments, thousands of hearts, prayers, and donations to Jessica's support fund, I realized I was witnessing the systematic monetization of a completely fictional version of my life. What Jessica didn't know was that I'd just discovered the tip of an iceberg that would fundamentally change not just our relationship, but her entire social media empire built on lies. She had no idea that her terminal partner was about to respond with the methodical precision of someone trained to save lives and document everything. My name is Dr. Michael Hayes, 29 years old, third-year emergency medicine resident at Boston General Hospital. I've spent the past 6 years of my life learning to make critical decisions under extreme pressure, to remain calm when others panic, and to gather accurate information before taking action. These skills served me well in trauma bays and cardiac arrest situations, but I never expected to need them in my personal life until the night I discovered my girlfriend's secret social media career. Jessica and I had been together for 2 years, meeting when she was working as a pharmaceutical sales representative and I was completing my final year of medical school. She was vibrant, charming, and seemed genuinely interested in medicine, asking thoughtful questions about my studies and expressing admiration for the challenges of medical training. I appreciated having someone who understood the demands of my education and residency, especially given the long hours and emotional toll of emergency medicine. What I didn't realize until much later was that Jessica's interest in my medical career wasn't personal support, it was content research. She had been quietly building a social media presence around what she called medical family life, positioning herself as the supportive partner of a young doctor navigating the challenges of modern healthcare. Initially, this seemed harmless. She posted general content about the stress of medical training, the challenges of maintaining relationships during residency, and lifestyle tips for healthcare families. The content began to shift 3 months ago when I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease following several weeks of concerning symptoms. The diagnosis came after thorough testing and consultation with gastroenterology specialists, and while it was certainly life-altering, it was far from terminal. Crohn's is a chronic inflammatory bowel disease that requires ongoing management, but allows for a completely normal lifespan with proper treatment. I responded well to initial therapy, and my prognosis was excellent that I had shared this diagnosis with Jessica in confidence, explaining the condition, the treatment plan, and my optimism about long-term management. She had seemed supportive, asking appropriate questions and offering emotional support during the adjustment period. What I didn't realize was that she was simultaneously crafting a very different narrative for her online audience. The video I discovered at 2:47 a.m. was just the latest in what I now realized was a months-long campaign of medical misinformation. As I scrolled through Jessica's social media accounts on my phone, the full scope of her deception became clear. She had been posting increasingly dramatic content about my deteriorating condition, my brave fight against terminal illness, and her own heroic dedication to caring for me. The posts were carefully crafted to maximize emotional impact and engagement. Photos of medication bottles, mine, taken without permission, with captions about another day fighting for time. Pictures of hospital bracelets from my routine follow-up appointments, described as more devastating news. Videos of Jessica crying while discussing the impossibility of planning our future together. Each post generated thousands of comments, shares, and, most disturbingly, donations to a GoFundMe campaign she had established for Michael's medical expenses and end-of-life care. I spent the remainder of my break methodically documenting what I found. Screenshots of posts, archived copies of videos, records of the fundraising campaigns, and a detailed timeline of how the narrative had evolved from supporting a medical student to caring for a terminal patient. My medical training had taught me the importance of thorough documentation, and I approached this discovery with the same systematic methodology I used in patient care. The most disturbing element wasn't just the misinformation, but the deliberate exploitation of genuine medical experiences. Jessica had filmed me during vulnerable moments, after difficult procedures, when I was managing symptoms, during conversations with my physicians, without my knowledge or consent. These private moments had been edited and recontextualized to support her fabricated narrative of terminal illness. By the time my shift ended at 6 a.m., I had compiled a comprehensive overview of Jessica's deception. The financial component alone was staggering. Her medical support, GoFundMe, had raised over $47,000 from well-meaning strangers who believed they were helping a young doctor with terminal illness. She had also leveraged her growing follower count to secure sponsorship deals with supplement companies, meditation apps, and wellness brands, all marketed to an audience that believed they were supporting someone facing end-of-life caregiving. I drove home in silence, processing not just the betrayal but the broader implications. Jessica had built a significant online presence, nearly 200,000 followers across platforms, based entirely on lies about my medical condition. She was profiting financially from deliberate misinformation while exploiting the genuine struggles that patients with chronic illnesses face daily. When I arrived home, Jessica was still asleep in our bedroom. Her phone sat on the nightstand, notifications lighting up every few minutes with comments and reactions to her latest video. I made coffee and sat at our kitchen table, developing a plan that would address not just the personal betrayal but the public harm her misinformation was causing. The first step was confirming the full extent of her deception. Using my laptop, I systematically reviewed every piece of content Jessica had posted over the past 6 months, creating a detailed spreadsheet tracking claims, dates, and discrepancies with medical reality. The pattern was clear and deliberate. She had gradually escalated from vague mentions of health challenges to specific false claims about terminal prognosis, aggressive treatments, and declining function. Step 2 involved documenting the financial exploitation. I traced the GoFundMe donations, sponsorship disclosures, and other revenue streams tied to her false narrative. The total amount was approaching $75,000 when I included sponsored content and affiliate marketing deals she had secured based on her fabricated story. By 8 a.m., when Jessica finally woke up, I had developed a comprehensive understanding of what she had built and a clear plan for addressing it. I waited in the kitchen as she went through her morning routine, knowing this would likely be our final conversation as a couple. "Morning, babe," she said, entering the kitchen with her usual bright smile. "How was your shift?" "Interesting," I replied, closing my laptop. I discovered something unexpected during my break. Her expression flickered with uncertainty. "Oh, what's that?" I pulled up the video on my phone and set it on the table between us. "Care to explain why you're telling 180,000 people that I'm terminal?" The color drained from Jessica's face as she stared at the screen. For a moment, she seemed genuinely speechless, perhaps the first authentic emotion I'd seen from her in months. "Michael, I can explain," she started, but I held up a hand to stop her. "Before you say anything else," I said calmly, "you should know I've spent the past 6 hours documenting everything. Every false claim, every unauthorized video, every dollar you've raised through medical misinformation. I have complete records." Her defensive posture crumbled slightly. "It's not what it looks like." "It's exactly what it looks like," I corrected. "You've built a social media career around false claims about my medical condition, raised money from strangers using deliberate misinformation, and violated my privacy by filming me without consent. This isn't a misunderstanding, Jessica. It's fraud." She attempted several justifications over the next 20 minutes. The content helped people feel less alone. The money was for our future together. She had gotten carried away, but meant no harm. With each explanation, it became clearer that she either didn't understand or didn't care about the severity of what she had done. "I made you famous," she finally said, her voice taking on an edge of defiance. "People love our story. You're inspiring them." "Our story?" I asked. "Jessica, you've created a fictional narrative where I'm dying. There is no our story here, just lies you've told for money and attention." "You don't understand social media," she shot back. "Everyone embellishes. Everyone creates content that's more dramatic than reality. It's just entertainment." This response confirmed what I had already concluded. Jessica didn't see her actions as harmful deception, but as acceptable content creation. She had compartmentalized the lies so thoroughly that she genuinely seemed to believe her justifications. That I stood and picked up my laptop. "Jessica, I'm going to give you exactly one opportunity to handle this correctly. You have 24 hours to delete all false content about my medical condition, issue a public correction explaining your misinformation, and return the money you've raised through false claims. If you do this voluntarily, I won't pursue legal action." "Legal action?" Her voice rose. "You're threatening to sue me?" "I'm informing you of consequences," I replied. "What you've done violates multiple laws: fraud, invasion of privacy, false advertising. More importantly, it harms people who actually face terminal diagnoses. Your lies trivialize real medical struggles." "And if I don't agree to your demands?" she asked, anger now clearly overwhelming fear. "Then I expose everything publicly, file formal complaints with relevant authorities, and pursue legal remedies for the harm you've caused," I said matter-of-factly. "I've already prepared documentation for all three options." Jessica's response was immediate and predictable. She accused me of being ungrateful, controlling, and jealous of her social media success. She stormed out of the apartment, but not before I noticed her grabbing her ring light and camera equipment. Suggesting she planned to create more content about our conflict, I spent the rest of the day implementing phase one of my plan regardless of Jessica's choice. I contacted the GoFundMe platform with detailed documentation of the fraudulent fundraising, resulting in immediate suspension of the campaign and freezing of collected funds pending investigation. I filed complaints with the Federal Trade Commission regarding false advertising and sponsored content, and I submitted reports to the social media platforms hosting her content about deliberate medical misinformation. 22 hours later, Jessica still hadn't responded to my ultimatum. Instead, she had posted a new video titled, "When Your Terminal Partner Tries to Control Your Voice," which doubled down on the false claims while portraying me as an abusive partner trying to silence her truth-telling. This sealed her fate. I activated Phase 2. Working with my attorney, I filed a comprehensive lawsuit seeking damages for invasion of privacy, defamation, and fraudulent representation. I also contacted Dr. Sarah Martinez, a colleague who specialized in medical ethics, about the broader implications of Jessica's misinformation campaign. "This isn't just personal," Dr. Martinez explained after reviewing the documentation. "Medical misinformation on social media is a serious public health issue. When people fabricate medical narratives for profit, it undermines trust in legitimate medical information and exploits people facing real health challenges." With Dr. Martinez's guidance, I developed Phase 3, a public education campaign about medical misinformation. Rather than simply responding to Jessica's lies, I would provide a comprehensive case study about how false medical narratives are created and monetized on social media. That I created a detailed blog post explaining the entire situation, complete with screenshots, timeline documentation, and factual information about Crohn's disease versus the terminal illness narrative Jessica had fabricated. I shared this with medical professional networks, patient advocacy groups, and social media literacy organizations. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Medical professionals shared the post as an example of how vulnerable populations can be exploited through fabricated health narratives. Patient advocacy groups used it to highlight the real impact of medical misinformation. Social media literacy. Educators incorporated it into training materials about identifying false health claims online. Meanwhile, Jessica's audience began asking uncomfortable questions. Comments on her videos shifted from supportive to skeptical as people noticed inconsistencies in her narrative. Several followers who had donated to her fundraising campaign demanded explanations about how their money was being used. The tipping point came when a local news station picked up the story, framing it as an investigation into social media medical fraud. The reporter interviewed me about the discovery process and the broader implications of fabricated health narratives for profit. They also attempted to interview Jessica, who declined to comment but couldn't prevent them from fact-checking her public claims. Within a week, Jessica's carefully built social media empire began collapsing. Sponsors terminated their agreements after learning about the fraudulent medical claims. Social media platforms removed content that violated policies about medical misinformation. Her follower count dropped precipitously as the story spread. Through medical and social media communities, the legal proceedings moved forward systematically. Jessica's attorney attempted to negotiate a settlement, but I was no longer interested in quick resolution. The case had become about more than personal betrayal. It was establishing precedent for how medical misinformation should be addressed legally. The final resolution came 6 months later. Jessica agreed to a comprehensive settlement that included public admission of the false claims, restitution to donors who had been defrauded, and agreement to cease all content creation related to medical topics. She also faced federal penalties for fraudulent fundraising and violations of platform policies about health misinformation. More importantly, the case contributed to stronger enforcement policies about medical misinformation on social media platforms, and provided a roadmap for other victims of health-related fraud to pursue legal remedies. A year after discovering that first video, I had completed my emergency medicine residency and begun a fellowship in medical toxicology, a specialty that involves detecting and analyzing harmful substances, including information toxins like medical misinformation. The skills I developed investigating Jessica's deception had found new application in my professional work. Jessica attempted to contact me once more several months after the legal settlement, claiming she wanted to make amends and learn from her mistakes. I declined the meeting but wished her well in rebuilding her life around more honest pursuits. The experience taught me that systematic deception often reveals itself through inconsistencies that become apparent under methodical analysis. Jessica's false narrative about my medical condition began unraveling the moment I applied the same evidence-based approach I used in medical diagnosis to her social media content. My girlfriend used my medical story for fame, building a lucrative online presence around fabricated claims about my terminal illness. She didn't know I'd seen her videos, and she certainly didn't anticipate that her terminal partner would respond with the systematic precision of someone trained to document evidence and save lives. In the end, the betrayal led to broader positive changes, stronger policies about medical misinformation, legal precedent protecting privacy and health-related content, and educational resources helping others identify and respond to similar exploitation. What began as personal deception became a catalyst for systemic improvements in how society addresses health-related fraud in the digital age. Sometimes the most effective response to deliberate misinformation isn't emotional confrontation but methodical exposure of the truth. Jessica learned this lesson the hard way, discovering too late that fabricating medical narratives about a physician who specializes in evidence-based analysis was perhaps the worst content strategy she could have chosen.